So we are halfway through MY 2026, and at this point, something important has shifted. So back in January, quality leaders were making plans. They were building strategies, finalizing retrieval targets, expanding abstraction capacity, aligning vendors, right? Launching provider engagement. And everything was really about preparing for the year end. July is different. By now, your operating model has revealed itself. You already know where provider engagement is working. You also know where retrieval is falling behind. You know which measures are outperforming expectations or which measures are performing below expectations. You also know where abstraction requires constant rework. You probably know which problems are not going to solve on their own. So the question isn't, what is our strategy? The question should have been answered 6 months ago. And the real question is this: given what we know today, where should we focus the time we have left in the year? Because the second half of the year isn't simply a continuation of the first. It is a different management problem. And I think that is where many health plans unintentionally struggle. Well, that is the topic for today's episode. Let's get into it. So welcome back. My name is Peter Sa. Every episode we explore why healthcare organizations, in this case health plans, lose value, not because the information doesn't exist, but because something breaks down between member encounter and the final submission. Today's episode isn't about HEDIS specification changes. It is not about technology. It is about executive decision making. Because I believe leadership priorities should change as the measurement year progresses. In the first half of the year, success is often about building capacity. Can we retrieve enough charts? Can we collect enough evidence? Can we engage enough providers? Do we have enough abstraction resources? Can we establish the workflows we need? Those are capacity questions. The second half is different. Capacity becomes limited in the second half. Time becomes limited. Provider access becomes more difficult. Every remaining retrieval opportunity matters more. Every operational decision carries a greater consequences. That is no longer a capacity problem. It is an allocation problem, and health plans that tends to recognize that shift early tends to finish the year much stronger than those that continue operating as if it's still January. Well, there are 4 decisions that I'm going to be sharing. And the first is this: as a leader, in the second half of the year, you need to stop expanding activity and increase impact. One observation has stayed with me throughout my work in healthcare quality. So we measure activity exceptionally very well. Charts requested, charts retrieved, data retrieved, provider response rates, charts abstracted, pages reviewed, turnaround time. Those metrics are operationally important. But by July, they are no longer enough because activity doesn't necessarily produce impact. Let's take chart retrieval as an example. Imagine 2 health plans, both retrieve 10,000 charts over the next 3 months. On paper, they appear equally productive, but one organization retrieves charts because they are available. The other retrieve charts because they are likely to produce meaningful evidence. Those are completely different strategies. One would measure activity. The other would allocate resources based on expected impact. That is the shift I think leaders need to make during the second half of the year, because every remaining chart should answer one simple question. If we retrieve this record, what value are we expecting it to create? Because not every chart carries the same opportunity. Some contains evidence that is already available digitally. Some support measures that are already performing very well. Some are unlikely to influence year-end performance. Others may represent your greatest remaining opportunity. So if those opportunities aren't distinguished, then the health plan risks spending resources or scarce time on work that adds little value. And that is luxury the second half of the measurement year rarely allows. This is where executive leadership becomes different from operational management. Because operational management asks, can we complete the work? Executive leadership asks, is this the highest value work we can be doing? Those are different questions. One would measure productivity, the other measures performance. And as the calendar moves closer to the year end, health plans no longer have unlimited opportunities to recover. So every week matters. Every provider interaction matters more. Every abstraction matters more. Every retrieval or data collection matters more because the remaining capacity is becoming increasingly valuable. And that is why I think the second half of the measurement year demands a different mindset. Not more activity, but it's more about precision. Not simply doing more work, but it's making better decisions about the work that remains in the year. If I could leave quality leaders with one idea from the first section, it would be this. The first half of the measurement year is about building capacity. The second half of the measurement year is about allocating scarce capacity where it creates the greatest impact. I believe organizations that make that shift early will finish MY 2026 very differently from those that don't. The second decision that executives need to be thinking about is you really need to stop chasing coverage and start chasing leverage. Now, let me break this down. One of the realities of the second half of the measurement year is that not every opportunity will carry the same value. So in January, it's reasonable to cast a wide net. You have time to retrieve more evidence, more data, engage more providers, test new workflows, and adjust staffing, recover from mistakes. But by July, that flexibility begins to disappear. Time becomes your most constrained resource, and that changes how leaders think. The question is no longer how many opportunities are left. The better question becomes which opportunities have the greatest ability to change our year-end performance. And that is leverage, in my opinion. Every remaining provider outreach shouldn't simply increase activity. It should increase the probability of meaningful evidence. So every remaining chart retrieve, every data retrieved shouldn't simply increase volume. It should increase the probability of measurable impact. Every operational decision should move the health plan closer to its highest value opportunities. Because when resources become constrained, leverage matters more than coverage. Again, when resources become constrained, leverage matters more than coverage. And I think health plans that recognize this shift make better decisions during the second half of the measurement year. And it's not because they work harder, but because they become more selective. Now, the third consideration that executives need to make is this. You need to find friction before deadline exposes it. One of the most overlooked indicators inside quality operations isn't productivity, it is friction. Now, think about the work that repeatedly slows down, charts that require multiple reviews, evidence that moves back and forth between abstraction and quality assurance, provider documentation that creates conflicting interpretations, clinical questions that require repeated escalations. Those aren't isolated events. Those are operational signals, and they tell you where your system is losing efficiency. Manufacturing organizations spend enormous effort in identifying bottlenecks because they really know that delay compound as production volume increases. And healthcare quality behaves the same way. Every unnecessary handoff, every unnecessary repeated review, every disagreement consumes the time that cannot be recovered later in the measurement year. And that is why I think July is the right time to ask a different type of question. Not how productive are we, but where is work slowing us down? Because health plans rarely miss year-end goal because of one of major failure. More often they lose momentum through dozens of smaller inefficiencies that accumulate over time. And fixing friction in July is significantly less expensive than trying to compensate for it in October. The fourth considerations that leaders need to make is operate as if audit started today. One pattern I have observed over the years is that many health plans think about audit readiness near the end of the measurement year. Operationally, that is too late because audit readiness isn't something you prepare for after evidence is produced. It's something you should build into evidence production process itself. Every abstraction should answer a simple question. Can we confidently defend this interpretation 6 months from now? If the answer isn't very clear, then the evidence probably needs additional attention today, not after the submission. The health plan that perform well during audit usually don't have perfect documentation. On the other hand, they have a disciplined operating practice. Their evidence is constant. Their decisions are traceable. The abstraction standards are applied the same way across teams. Audit confidence isn't created during audit season. So, as we move through the second half of MY 2026, I think the challenge facing many MA leaders, Medicare Advantage leaders, is becoming clearer. It's no longer about doing more. It's about deciding what deserves attention. The organizations that finish the year strongest will not necessarily retrieve the most charts. They won't necessarily retrieve the most pages or the most evidence, and they won't necessarily have the largest abstraction teams. They will make better decisions with the capacity they have left. They will focus on the highest impact opportunities. They will remove operational friction before it becomes an operational failure. And they will build evidence that they can confidently stand behind. Now, and if you remember one thing from today's episode, let it be this. The first half of the measurement year is about capacity, as I mentioned. The second half is about allocating capacity where it creates the greatest impact, the greatest value. And I believe that is the leadership challenge that defines the rest of MY 2026. Well, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening, also, or even watching. If you found today's discussion valuable, I would like for you to kindly share with someone on your quality team, stars or clinical operations or risk adjustment team. And I will see you in the next episode. Have a good one.